Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter,
And Sarah Sieg Evagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World Collective Consciousness Share. Yeah, this past week has been interesting.
Yeah, it's been all over the place.
I'll use the word.
As have I.
Yeah, yeah, and you're home now. So,
Right, right.
but it's it was interesting, and I guess I'll start with where we started coming into this topic was so anyone who there's the Amityville horror. The Amityville horror story has been out since the late 70s or whatever. Interestingly, growing up on Long Island, it was not too far from me. The whole Amityville horror house and everything else. Anyhow, I had this weird, uncanny just connection with that one story for so long. And good morning, Yasmin. And I have for years throughout my entire adult life had dreams on occasion. Like in the beginning, in the early adult life, I would have dreams where I was Kathy Lutz, who's the woman in the main character, one of the main characters in the story. And I would be walking through the story over and over and over again. And I hated it and I loved it and I hated it. Good morning, Nicole. And then over the years it's changed, and I was interesting as coming into this, and like I hadn't really thought about it coming into this, I guess it must have been, I don't know, 5 years ago. I came across like a documentary by one of the kids in the family, and they were talking about this, and I realized, oh, this is what happened to that story. And I'm like, why do I still care? Anyway,
Right.
so this past week we've been doing that lucid dreaming thing online, right? And one of the things was, like let yourself become these main things in your dream, not necessarily a person, but things if they're significant. So it was interesting that right after that, I had a dream about the house, which I hadn't had in ages.
Mm-hmm.
And in the dream, I had rented the house to have Thanksgiving dinner with like a big family gathering, and not realizing it was that house. We walked in, and as soon as we walked in, I was like, oh, I know this house so well. Right.
Right.
And it was like the downstairs was okay, but like as you would go up the stairs, and it was weird because I was like, I remember the downstairs being a lot bigger. And then used to go upstairs, you could tell things were starting to fall apart. They were getting dilapidated. It sort of felt ignored and deprived. And I felt sort of sad about it.
Right.
And I was like, one part of me was nervous about waking up the house, right?
Right.
But the other part of me was sort of sad that the house was, a little run down.
Right.
Yeah. So then I was going to, as my kids, as they are now as adults, whatever, they were with me and they were just fascinated and everything. So I'm like, well, let me give you a tour of the house. So we go upstairs, and, I'm like, oh, well, so like, for example, I'd be like, oh, well, here's a bathroom here. But then we would look through the bathroom, and then like there would be a door that appeared on the other side of the bathroom, and then a whole nother section of the house would pop up, which I've had tons of those like house expansion.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I'd be like, oh, I forgot about that part. And I forgot about that part of the house and all this kind of stuff. And I said, hey, let's pick this up. Let's clean this up a bit, feeling like it deserved to be honored in some way or whatever. And as I was doing that, like I would have these flashes, really vague flashes of the horror stuff that happened at different times in different places, different whatever. Good morning, Gloria. And so I woke up and I thought, oh, wow, I haven't had a dream about that house in ages. And what an interesting twist on that experience was that dream. So I had gone back remembering that thing that I had gone through about like be the thing. And I was like, okay, so let me be the house. What am I saying? Because I've had this house in my dreams for forever, since I can remember, off and on. And as soon as I connected in, it was like, oh, well, like like, why did I never think of like being the house and saying, well, what does the house have to say? What is the house saying to me by showing up like this, right? And right away, it was my shadow side.
Mm-hmm.
It was my shadow. And it was like, and it had to do with this whole, we've been doing a whole bunch of stuff on shadow, whatever, but there's been a lot of irritation and aggravation. And then but the thing is, with all the irritation and aggravation that's been going on, I realized it was like, well, it's the shadow. The shadow feels sort of neglected. The shadow feels disempowered and dishonored.
Right. And the bad guy made the scapegoat of everything that's, quote, wrong.
Well, yes and no, but almost like it's just being ignored, which is worse.
Right. That's true.
Because it was almost like then looking at all of the stuff that came up and the anger and triggering that came up in the past week, it was almost like the shadows trying to push on the points to say, look at how powerful I am and help you. Look at how powerful I am in helping you. Look at the things you don't want to look at. Right.
Right.
And yet we're doing all this stuff and we're going, oh, get rid of the darkness, and resolve the shadow. And it's, and the ego goes, but then how do you do that? How do you resolve it without falling into it? Right.
Right. I mean, if you think about, like, for instance, a relationship that just continually triggers you into so many spots of your insecurity and things for you to look at, and your solution is to end the relationship, not solve the triggers, not resolve the triggers, not look in the mirror at what it is, why I'm being triggered.
Right.
And that's like ignoring the shadow.
Sometimes.
By just saying, I'm just not going to look at you because you're showing me something I don't want to see.
Well, or even I'm not like, but we're not even doing that. Like, we've been looking at all that stuff for so long, right? So I think part of it has to do with this other aspect that's been hidden from us, which is resolving the shadow is actually almost more scary to the ego, right? Resolving it and making peace with it is almost scary to the ego, because then it's like, well, I lost my power. I'm losing my power. That's the shadow. I'm losing my power on you because you're becoming more peaceful. And look, the more we become more peaceful about it, we don't use it as our trigger. We don't use it as we don't use it as our propulsion, right? And then it's losing it. So then it's sort of losing its power. And then we're like, well, how do we exist this way?
Right.
Because we created duality and separation through propulsion, right? And the me and not me, right? So this is a tricky, like, and this is the thing, it's like, I've been sitting with it all weekend. I'm like, it's very tricky, very mercurial, right? Put your finger on it and it moves, because we want to just say, oh yeah, no, it's the shadow stuff. No, but we've been looking at shadow stuff and we are totally aware of it. And we've been making peace with it. And it's almost like the death of the shadow, right? But then the same thing that came to me very strongly was, as we allow the death of the shadow, it's also important. Well, the requirement of allowing the death of the shadow is allowing the death of the light as well.
Right. And I think that's where the comes.
Right.
I don't think I can do that.
Right. Because we judge the light so favorably and we judge the dark so, negatively, because then that's part of what the shadow is saying, is going, why is it you have to come to peace with me and allow me to resolve, but you are still feeding the light. You're still feeding the light as if it's something better.
Right.
When it can blind you, interestingly enough, is what came to me, right? The light blinds you.
It can blind you. I mean, it can be, it can, I mean, right.
And so it's so this is so tricky in many ways, because it's not a way we've looked at this at all, I think. Right.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like, okay, if you only want the day and not the night.
Right. You
can't do it. You can't do just the light.
And then eventually you stop perceiving the light because you have nothing to contrast it. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I have actually been sitting with the apology and forgiveness and acceptance and embracing blah, 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 all the lessons through propulsion in the darkness and through the light. Yeah.
Right.
And that has caused actually, this morning I did that meditation. I was like, yeah, I don't want to come back. I'm pretty good here. This is a good spot.
Right.
And so, so it's like, well, what do we do? What do we do with that? How do we do that differently? Because we still are using the light against the darkness and the darkness against the light when we look at things by triggers, right? Because what do we look at as a trigger? A trigger is, oh, when we're just not aligned, right? And we perceive the being aligned as being in the light, right? And that the not aligned part is not being in the light.
See, and I look
So,
as aligned as being balanced.
well, I do too, but balance is also duality based, right? Balanced is the
True.
idea of everything has to be equal and opposite, right? And I think that's the thing. It's like I said, it's very tricky in many ways because it's like not the way, it feels like it's not the way we've looked at things at all in the past. It's like shifting our perspective to something completely new.
Well, because if you don't talk about, like, for instance, addressing the chaos of today, if you don't talk about it in terms of light and dark and push and pull and give and take, there's nothing to talk about.
Exactly.
And talk about instant resolution.
Right.
If there's nothing to talk about, what's there
There's
to resolve?
nothing to resolve. Right. So as we are resolving all of our, like, if we are to be resolving duality at the depth of what we're resolving it at, then it's really just as important for us to resolve the light as it is to resolve the darkness.
Right.
And then, but that's the thing, because then the ego goes, but then what then? Like, what do we do then? Like,
Right.
that's no fun. The playground goes away. Right.
Right. And what do you do with that?
Yeah.
What's to be done?
Yeah. And the thing is, it goes back to, you know, the more we focus. So here's the funny thing. In the past, what have we done? We've done the battle of good versus evil and the good versus bad. Right.
Always.
And so, like, it was always, you know, prominent. And, you know, even today you see some people getting very, you know, oh, this is like against the forces of evil and the forces of darkness and, you know, the conspiracy stuff of what's, you know, blah, blah, blah. And that's like implied to be the battle of the light versus the dark. Right. And we've talked about, like, it's the more we create a battle, the more we create the separation.
It reinforces. Right.
And so it's like we talk about light workers and we talk about light language and we talk about, you know, being in the light and let me send you some light, you know, like it's, oh, you're seeing this as, and I've been looking at some, you know, like it's so, you're so light filled, right? People say that as a compliment.
Right.
Do you walk up and that's, you know, bless you. See, it's true.
Right. And it was just one, so it must be.
It must be. But you know, and then instead of saying, oh, like, do you walk up to people and say, oh, you have so much dark. It's so beautiful.
Ooh, I can see your darkness.
I think that's what they call emo.
Right.
But yeah, and so it's like, well, then how do we do that differently? Because look, we've built our entire practices of resolving stuff in the darkness, but we haven't built practices around resolving stuff in the light because we still judge it as good and as if there's nothing to judge.
Right. It's like giving it a sense of well, it's that hierarchy. It's imposing hierarchy on the two.
Yes. Right, that the light is better than the dark.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's something, it was one of the Nicole says, love and light, I can see your darkness. Yeah, right. Yep. But it's like, but we can, and that's the whole thing, is we can only see somebody's light if we can see the darkness in them simultaneously, right? And so it's like, and you know, it's, do you like pastels? Do you like, you know, dark colors? It's all the same kind of thing. The depth adds is how much black is in it, how much darkness is in it, right? So, you know, we glorify getting through the dark to the light, right? you know, but I think back, and there's one of the Star Wars movies, it was one of the last ones, and Kylo Ren was talking to what's her face, I don't remember, I can't, like I zoom past those movies, but there was one conversation, and it was funny because my husband and I were in the movie theater, and when we watched it, and he looked at me and he goes, that's so perfect, on how he was talking about, well, let's get rid of all of them, the Sith and the Jedi, because their mere existence causes the equal and opposite. So their mere existence of the Jedi creates the Sith, and the mere existence of the Sith creates the Jedi, because there's the equal and opposite of the night and the dark, right?
It's almost like, you know, from Field of Dreams, even though this is kind of different, if you build it, they will come. So if you create this, then they'll be there.
Right.
Yep.
And so it's like, well, and I think that's what's starting to come in, like, because this morning I was like, well, I mean, and I couldn't even let myself look at it all weekend. I just sort of flowed with it because I'm like, well, this is so big. I don't even know how to look at this yet, you know? And it's like, well, there was something else recently that it was the same thing, but then, and there was even like some insight that I had gotten recently of looking at something on, I don't know, social media or whatever, where I was just thinking, the more we create this, you know, essence of light, light workers, blah, 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 the more we're creating the dark.
Right.
So by focusing on how light you are, or how light filled you are, or how much of a light being you are, right? Like, it's so funny, people talk about, oh, I saw this light being, blah, blah. Nobody says, oh, I saw this dark being, or if they do, they say it's like really negatively and scary, right?
Well, and you know, okay, so is there a you know, there's light language, is there a dark language?
Right, of course that's what this is, I think.
Right.
Good morning, Sandy. Yeah, so it's and so if we started, like, I was thinking, oh, because I started untangling everything, looking at this way this weekend. And like I said, it's like, so we talk about triggers, we talk about this, we talk about that. And it's like, well, God, that's even like still putting the dark against the light. And it's like, okay, so how do we do this differently?
Right.
How do we do this beyond the perception of both? Without, because yeah, Sarah and Sandy says right, and it drives us into deeper separation, which is, it feels like almost, so here's the thing, how do we do it differently? We've talked about this for years.
Years, right. And you know, you think, okay, well, if I master both, then I master my separation.
Yeah.
But that still is from that definition of separation. It still separates the dark and the light.
Yes.
So it's almost like that isn't even close enough.
I know. And that's where it's like I said, I think this is going to be like a multi-week thing, because it's like really unraveling stuff that's like, huh, you know,
well,
like,
and you know, it has to involve some form of losing judgment, because that is what creates the dark and the light, is judging that this is this and this is this.
Right. And it's funny because, so for example, you have people who do healing work, energy work, light work, that's what people all call it, right?
Right.
But then when they get beyond the light and the dark, what do we have? We have the creative void, right?
Which is just everything.
Which is just everything and nothing simultaneously. So, and some perceive it to be dark. I just perceive it to be everything and nothing when I've been there, you know?
Yeah, it's almost, when I've experienced it, it's almost like it's like a darkness, but yet a charge associated with it, like a spark, which to me would be the light, you know. So it's, I don't know, it's
exactly. It's like we lose our
I want to feel for it, and it's like, yeah, it's incredible.
It's creating
I don't perceive it as dark or light.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And we don't have a description for it, right? Nicole says, what if we choose not to judge that, but to appreciate something's isness? Well, that's that's the thing. But which we've been talking about, but but what's underneath it is, then how do we stop our judgments based in in that light versus dark, right? Because we don't even realize we're using them. you know.
Well, and in looking at that whole epic battle of the light versus the dark, from this perspective, it just looks so small and tiresome.
Well, and it's funny because, like I said, we've changed the vernacular, we've changed the battlefield, right?
Right.
And yet it's so very ulterior motive, like back to the same battle, because it is the ulterior motive here is to perpetuate the separation and the polarity because we enjoy the game so much, right?
Absolutely.
And so we keep on saying we're going to do it differently this time, and we're fooling ourselves to think that we're doing it differently by doing this whole light worker thing and the working in the light and everything else. But it's not, because it's just a different thing. It's a different version of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. And Sandy says being called a light worker is usually in context as opposed to the dark, which is centered in judgment. Right. And
Right.
but and it's like, oh, well, you're such a light worker, or you're a natural light worker and you came here to be a light worker. And it's like, well, why don't I ever hear, well, you came here to be a dark worker?
Right. Right.
And you came here to be the dark. You came here to
Right.
be
Right. Right. Turn up your darkness.
Turn up your darkness. And so, like, I've changed, even like in the practice of Trinity, where we use the light, we use that light thing or whatever, to some degree. I've actually changed the intention words, which I've been updating, whatever, to like, I now focus on the whole of divine consciousness within, which it just encompasses everything. There's no light.
Right. Right.
Or there is
my
light.
wholeness.
Right. And that's a completely different feeling altogether, right? It's like when we did that thing in February, March, in our deep dive, yeah, in Florida, where instead of that light, like we do that meditation with the light from the heart. Yeah, we just did it from the creative void, right? And it was like, oh, the creative void comes in from the center and expands out. And it was like getting lost in that creative void. Woo! It was so powerful, so not just powerful, but totally relaxing, expansive. Yep.
And non friction related, because I really think the light and the dark create that level of friction, which then invokes emotion, which to me is exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so nice to step into that creative void and to turn that up and to sit in that space of just utter peace.
Because it's letting go of that friction, right? Which is so relaxing, because you're like, oh yeah, take that.
Right.
And where I felt that, the first time I really felt that was doing a float tank, right? A sensory deprivation tank, where it was like after the mind settled down and I stopped focusing on every muscle in my body. And the mind was like, and let go.
And lost contact with it. Right. Yeah.
It just went away. And then I was like, oh, this is the creative void. It was so beautiful. And
Michael says, are you whole and complete? I don't know if he means, are you whole or complete?
Yeah. We are already, like we talk about the whole premise in even the Trinity practice is that we are already complete. We are the whole of divine consciousness, and we just have forgotten in separation, right? So there's nothing to learn. It's only to remember, right? You're not learning anything new. There's nothing new to learn because we already have the access to all of that remembrance, except we've just forgotten it yet. So when we really focus from that perspective of taking out the slats of, the slats of separation and the duality, the partitions of whatever we want to call it, it just allows that freedom of release. And when you're in that creative void, then that is the wholeness, that is the allness, it's the nothingness at the same time. It's the all and nothing.
Right.
So
Nicole says, yes, we we all are. Our programming is that we are flawed. Once we learn that we need to, we feel it more consistently.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And Sandy says the creative void is everything and nothing at all. It's complete with everything and nothing, the energy of all. It's amazing when one allows a remembrance.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's
So
been
that in context of seeing that as the resolution of the light and the dark.
well, and it's the completion, like it's all of it. It's beyond the light and the dark. It's so beyond the light and the dark. It's that like the light and the dark becomes such a small part of everything when you allow yourself to relax into the creative void, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we used to talk, like I used to talk about it as like the music of the spheres, right?
Right, right.
The symphony, the tones, the frequencies of the multiverse that make that whole symphony up. And it's like, well, when you hear that, or you not even hear that, and when you relax yourself
Feel
into
it.
you feel it, you just remember it and know it, and it becomes so blissfully everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, this is even beyond that because it's the
Right.
nothing and the everything. And it's like, whew, you know, it was the potential.
It's overwhelming nothingness.
Yes. And everythingness simultaneously.
Right, right.
Right. And so the thing for us is really to start watching. I think part of it is the first part is to really start watching our verbs, our verbiage, our
Right,
vernacular,
right.
and how we have it incorporated. And I know this is going to cause a whole big reconsideration of everything for me and how I term things and how
Mm-hmm.
I, for myself and with others. It's like, okay, so when we're doing this from the creative void, what is there to create?
Right.
Because when we look at creation, and we do it, we create from this expanded perspective. And when we do that, it becomes, and we do it without a perception of it has to be this way, it has to be right. Well, that's letting go of the control, right? That it has to
Mm-hmm.
be a positive experience and this and this and this, right? Because we judge,
Right.
that's a judgment in light or dark kind of thing, right? And we create from that wholeness, which is like beyond love. It's just this whole completion, this whole everythingness. And it's like, well, then if we create it in that freedom, that's where we create differently.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's where you create universes.
Exactly. Yeah. Upon universes, upon universes,
Right,
upon universes.
right.
So, part of it, I think, is for us to, how do we do this? How do we do it while we're here? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or allowing ourselves to remember it differently, to exist differently from there, because then I feel like that's going to change our entire way of resolving things. Because it's almost like literally taking a dirty blanket, a blanket that's dirty from sitting in the sand or whatever, and just shaking it out, right? And then
Right,
folding it up and moving on. It's like you don't even have to look at all of those details anymore.
right. Nice.
It's like, oh yeah, shaking it out. Yeah, that's done. Oh, look at that little piece in the bigger picture. It sort of takes us into a more expanded perspective much more quickly. But the challenge is we're so addicted to that. We are so deeply addicted.
We are. And we believe that we will lose more than we will gain to let go of it.
Yes. Good morning, Sandra. Yes. Because like I said, with me, the whole thing this weekend was the ego was like, what? Like, how do I even, like, how do we function? How do we exist? What do we do? Like, what do we say? Like, it was like this whole weekend. And I'm like, how about nothing?
Right, exactly.
And maybe part of the reason we're being deaf to each other today and talking over each other and not listening to each other is because it's all lost its meaning. It's all lost its impact.
Right.
And the words become less and less important. I don't know, it's not even just the words, it's the way we define through the words becomes less
Right.
important.
It's the essence associated with it.
Yeah. Nicole says nap. I
choose to nap. Yeah.
Nap, yeah. And so it's I think this is the first step of like probably many steps in this, because this is an unraveling of a huge piece, and we've got until October when we do our shadow month.
Right. I was thinking that exact same thing. And it's funny that today twice now I've run into knots. Like I'm unpacking my stuff and I'm getting my jewelry out, and it's like it's only 3 necklaces and earrings, and it's like this big conglomeration, and I want to go, I just can't deal with that. And I'm like, no, just a little piece at a time. And now I've gotten it down to where it's 2 necklaces. And so then I come in here, and it's like, in order to pair my mouse back with my computer, it's like I have to plug it in, even though it's wireless. And it's like, so then I pull out the cords, and even though they're all labeled, everything else, it's like this big conglomeration of this knot. It's like, okay, there's got to be a message in this.
Oh, yeah. See, there's yawns coming. Yes. Yeah. Because this is a big one to untangle, because we have so many layers of judgment and accepted judgment, like, because that's how we define through words, is based on contrasting and all that kind of stuff, right? And we've been talking about getting past the words for a long time, right? And it's like, well, but this is even bigger than getting past the words. This is getting past
all of it.
All of it.
Right. Absolutely. Including ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think that's where the ego goes. Yeah, no. I'll nap, like Nicole says.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I'm getting tired. It's time to go lay down.
Yep.
But and so it's sort of exciting, it's sort of like there's a bit of fear, right? There's a bit of fear because we've done this in this way and for eons, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the yawn again.
Right. Well, we've done it all of separation.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And so if we're going to shift this, it's to, it's funny. I was thinking about that this morning when I was on my walk. I was like, the whole light language thing, like that's like the big thing these days, right? Who does light language? And so, and I was like, but the thing is, when somebody comes out with dark language and plays it together with light language, there is the power. There is the wholeness. And so even saying that, wow. I feel it, right?
Well,
because I think that it's not complete until they sing together.
Right. And I think that the alchemy bowls come closer to that. Mm-hmm. That combination.
Yes. Well, there's no judgment. They sort of sing in the whole of it, right?
Right. And that class starts tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get done with our little session. So Nicole says, I had a conversation with my son about my feelings this weekend. I explained that I was processing a shift in judgment. I perceive certain actions to be honorable and respect, honor and respect. The lack of them is then disrespect. I had to ask myself, what is the deeper issue? My choice of perspective. Okay, cool. I guess I just am not sure what the question is. Yeah.
Well, and it is our choice. Our choice is to perceive the light and the dark as we perceive them.
Yes.
Just like it's, and it's our creation within our reality. So it's a question of stepping to that place of doing it different,
Mm-hmm.
looking at the creative void in encompassing all of that.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess for today, our session is about allowing that to start coming together.
Yeah, I
Allowing
feel
it.
like it's coming to a new place of observation.
Yeah.
With it
First.
all.
First, before we can even do anything with it,
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I felt she said I felt that was in line with what we're discussing today. In the past, I would have, but decided to talk. I decided to talk it out. Well, cool. Yeah. So today is about, I think that first thing of observation, first of all, being able to see that within ourselves and like, it's funny because we sit there and we'll go, oh, no, I got that. I don't have to do anything.
Right.
Because we keep on thinking of oh, well, if I'm in the light, then I can see everything in the darkness. And it's like, no.
No.
It's shifting our entire perspective of no judgment, that we're beyond that. We're beyond the dark and the light. Right.
It's like you can't discern between the two.
Right. There's no difference.
And it's where we seem to be heading in the opposite direction of that.
Yeah. So the first is for us to start to be able to discern that within ourselves, within our verbiage, within our practices, on how to shift it to go beyond a definition of dark or light, right?
Right.
Beyond practicing it's like beyond living with the dark propelling the light and vice versa. It's like, how do we do that differently?
Right. How do you perceive a darker dark without having the contrast of the lighter light?
Right. Right. Or even just,
or vice versa. Yeah.
Or vice versa. Or even just
perceive the everythingness of everything.
That. Yes, that. Yeah. It's like we got to get bigger. It's like we got to keep on getting bigger and push ourselves to get bigger. So it's like, okay, so allowing ourselves to remember that, allowing ourselves to see it within ourselves and with others. And there's no, like, and free of judgment, because there's no judgment about it, but it's like, it's letting go of it. How do we let go of it? How do we, free ourselves?
And right off the bat, the first thing I feel is that this is very nourishing.
Oh, yeah.
Because it doesn't fragment ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, I can already feel that. Yeah, that feels.
Yeah, I feel that. It's like water rushing into a dry riverbed.
Yes, like sucking it up.
Right, exactly.
Thirsty.
Right.
All right, so yes, let's just do that. Let's set our intention to be able to see that within ourselves and with each other and our environment, our reality, how, what the completion of that looks like.
Right.
And moving past it into a different kind of, yeah. Sandra says like it's a symphony coming together. Yeah, it is. It's like, okay, instead of us still like looking at each part and piece and whatever, it's like, oh, that symphony's always there. Let's like back out and listen to it all, the whole thing, because we are all of it. Right. It's like we've forgotten, And so it's like, okay, so let's just be able to observe that, to see it within us, to see it with others, to see it in our realities, and to start disentangling and unknotting it, so we can see everything's true purpose in that symphony. And it's easy, and let it be easy. because we think the mind goes, oh my God, I don't want to see all that stuff simultaneously, which is
Right.
funny because I have had this series of dreams over the last several weeks where it is like a Where's Waldo scene every dream. And it's like a different topic. And I'm trying to get someplace and there's all these things going on. And it's almost like that's what I've been showing myself like, oh no, this is what's going to happen. If you let yourself see all this and remember.
Right.
And it's like, no, we can do that. We can like see the details and see the big picture simultaneously beyond the light and the dark. And so whatever that entails, let's just stop there and we'll let that go. Ready?
Okay.
Yep. Let's close our eyes.
Let's
Take
do
a
it.
deep breath. And we just hold ourselves in that vibration where all that is our truth. That's where we live from and vibrate and manifest from as our truth. Everything else falls away. came back once and I was like, no, no, no. I can't. The longer I stayed out there, the better it felt. And it was like, it was like watching a weave, like a tapestry, right? That was woven start to come undone. It wasn't like undoing the whole thing. It was loosening it so it could function better. Like, and I can't explain that more, except that's what it felt like. And it was like, oh, and it was almost like this huge breath of fresh air, you know? Yes, Nicole, there's flute music. I forgot to turn off my meditation music in the background. It gets louder when I get quiet. I guess it's the nature of the mic. Anyway, so, but yeah, that felt, and the longer I sat there and let it like loosen, it was almost like loosen and readjust, loosen and readjust and loosen. And I was like, oh. And then I started coming back and I was like, nope, nope, nope. I'm going to go back and do that some more because that felt really good.
Yeah. The first thing I heard was, you need to go nap in this.
Oh yeah. Well, see, you wrap around you like a nice little blanket that's still got air.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I just kept seeing so many things just almost, it's like I would try to focus on it and it would like get really diffuse and then be like smoke. And it was like, oh, and I just kept doing, and it just seemed like I could breathe easier the more of that I did. And it just was so freeing and so trying to come up with the right word. It was like, it was a different type of sensory experience.
Yeah.
You know, you were talking about like in the float tank, how that's the sensory deprivation. It's like it was that, but there was a new sensory perception that was added in that was like, oh, this.
Right.
This. Yeah. So that was extremely peaceful.
Yes. Yeah. And it was funny because as I was like sort of easing into it, which, you know, I have a float tank gift certificate that I haven't used for my birthday. I'm thinking, might be time to go do this again.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
But it was like, it was almost like I was just touching the edge because it was like, I was like, oh, if I really dive in, I just won't come back right now.
Right.
You know, it was like, okay, I'm just going to ease in and let myself, you know, get in there. Yeah. But that was really cool.
Nicole said, once I noticed it, things started to oscillate from purple, red, and orange. My mouth started to water. Interesting experience.
Oh, that is interesting. So that's for us to play with this week, everyone.
Yeah. And Sandy says she didn't want to come back. I enjoyed the music. I saw a kaleidoscope going in both directions. Someone was turning it right, but it was going to the left. Beautiful colors on the spectrum, colors on oneness. Then I was transported to the desert with bright light. Everything needed was there. I kept floating out there more and more. And then you brought us back.
Sorry.
Right.
Trying to keep to our hour.
Right.
Oh, so you just go
back
back
there on your own.
Yeah, that's right. We'll meet out there. How's that? We'll meet out there again because we're already there. That's us.
Right. And we've always been there.
Yes. So, whew. So before we close off, we do want to talk about tomorrow. Our Wonderland program begins. We're so excited. The first course on worthiness, which what a week to start working on that last week. I'll tell you what.
No kidding.
To get that up. But if you haven't already signed up, I mean, really, this worthiness thing is so, I mean, they're all powerful. There's such core issues that connect so many different things.
Right.
If you look on the Ascended World page, I made a graphic of all these things that are connected that people don't think are connected to worthiness. And I actually wrote a blog on it last week too. And so, but the thing is, the price, the discount, the $99 for just the worthiness course, that ends tonight.
Right.
And then also the really awesome discount, which is the pick your price for the whole 7-course program, that ends tonight too. So we really hope you join us because, I mean, you get daily videos, you get a workbook for each course. We're doing a private Facebook group for open discussion. And what else are we doing? Oh, daily affirmations, and in our videos, and the whole thing is 15 to 20 minutes a day. So 5 minutes to do the pre video thing, and then 10 to 15 minutes to do the video. And then you have the affirmation, the creation statement for the day.
Right.
And this is crazy, incredibly powerful.
It really is. Really is.
And so, yeah, and the price is, I mean, it's just it's crazy, ridiculously awesome. So if you get the chance to do the pick your price and do the whole 7-course thing, it's really worth it. We're really excited to offer it. And we hope you join us. So
yeah.
Go out there and check it out. And you can, like I said, you also have the discount on just the one course, which is going to be $99 this night too. But it's even better of a price if you do the pick your price, just saying, for the whole thing.
Absolutely. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, because we really want to accommodate everybody where they are, and also honor ourselves for, all the time and effort and the incredible insight that comes out of this. And I'm not saying that just from us, but I mean, we're getting it just from doing it ourselves. So.
Exactly.
So we hope you join us, and we'll either see you there tomorrow, or we'll see you next week, or on Ascended World. So thanks for joining us. This is Angela Coulter.
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
And see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.